It shouldn't be as simple as we got the outcome we were looking for, so the decision was good, automatic. Because think of the opposite. If you don't get the outcome that you're looking for, do you always think the decision was flawed? Probably not. Hidden constraints that we don't even know about and external pressures, these variables are not the exception. This is the environment that you work in every day. And when you look at the result, it's easy to not consider what was the information available at the time of the decision. Everybody's the expert after the result is known. Few of the decisions that you make as a leader are cut and dry, yes/no questions. Everything's a little bit of a balancing act. Does that balance make sense? Is my judgment based on evidence that I see right in front of me or emotion? How others react is not on you. You're not in command of their feelings. And while that seems obvious, think about all the times you change your mind based on other people's feelings or perceived feelings. We develop a coherent story about our past success, and this story that we tell ourselves makes it very difficult to not try to predict success for the future. And we look past the changing environment entirely. You get 1 or 2 or 3 successes and you make a sweeping judgment. So you can do everything right and still get that bad outcome. And the opposite is true. We should never interpret any outcome, good or bad, in isolation. You can make all the right decisions and still have a bad result. Why is this, and who really cares anyway as long as you get what you need? Leadership outcomes are influenced by way more than your personal competence alone. Timing, context, unseen variables are all at play in the important decisions that you make as a leader. And every decision has an element of chance. And good, experienced leaders recognize this. They distinguish between decision quality and the outcome, and understand that good judgment can still produce a substandard result. And success isn't guaranteed or doesn't come automatically due to the good process that you execute leading up to it. And a lot of us are uncomfortable with this idea. So in this video, you're going to learn why effort doesn't always equal results. What is outcome bias? And what is the effect on overconfidence? We'll talk about the difference between decision quality and the outcome. And what can we learn from the Stoics about what is in our control and out of our control? And then what happens when we attribute too much success to our personal contributions? Hi, I'm Mike Targus, retired Marine officer and founder of Center Desk Leadership Coaching. I spent 21 years leading Marines. And when I got out, I crossed over into engineering, project management, and sales. So I've been on both sides, military and civilian, and I created this channel, which is about leading the team you have, not the one you wish you had. So here we go. Effort does not equal results. We're psychologically wired to think that it does, that if we put the effort in, we should get the result we're looking for. And the belief is reassuring. It's actually simplification, which is what we do automatically. We're always looking for shortcuts in our thinking. It's fair that I should put the effort in and I should get the outcome. And more importantly, internally, it's predictable. We're always looking for predictable results. If I work hard, if I think clearly, if I act decisively, I'm going to get that result. And a lot of times you do get the result, but not all the time. So you could ask yourself, who cares as long as most of the time I do get the result? What's the big deal? There's a couple things to consider. One is when you have success, your confidence grows. This is natural. And when you don't experience success, self-doubt, frustration can creep in pretty easily. But the situations you'll deal with as a leader are not that simple. Tangible, discrete results. Anything with people is what I call infinitely complex, and you need to have a strategy for the long-term development of your team. The decisions that you involve yourself with as a leader, they unfold in an environment of uncertainty. We don't see the whole picture ever. Variables like timing or behavior of our people, their emotions, shifting incentives, hidden constraints that we don't even know about, and external pressures, in general, randomness. These variables are not the exception. This is the environment that you work in every day. They're always present, and we're always trying to make decisions as leaders with this fog around us. And outcome bias is going to distort our judgment in doing so. We're putting too much emphasis on results. What is outcome bias really? Outcome bias is our tendency to evaluate a decision based on the result that it gave. And not just that, is we prioritize that, we overlook the quality of the decision making during that process. So many times it's probably okay to judge a decision by the result. In fact, it's a shortcut, but it works out a lot of times. But we have to be aware of the effect that could happen if we attribute too much to those outcomes. It shouldn't be as simple as we got the outcome we were looking for, so the decision was good, automatic. Because think of the opposite. If you don't get the outcome that you're looking for, do you always think the decision was flawed? Probably not. So here's one of the ways to look at the outcome. Again, when you're looking critically at the process, the decision-making that you're employing in the team, the outcome is just a signal. And it could be a variety of different signals, but it's just a signal. And what you don't want it to do is you don't want it to constrain your judgment. You don't want it to cause execution shortcuts. You don't want to let all this lead you to some sort of misleading verdict. We do this, and sometimes it's necessary. If you've ever used the term or heard the term results driven, it's kind of what we're talking about here. Outcome bias is particularly dangerous for your personal development. Anything that leads to overconfidence, you got to be skeptical about that. You got to watch and try to feel for that. And even if nobody's saying this to us, we're going to internalize these successes as we're doing something right. And again, a lot of times you are, but you want to maintain that critical look at yourself. We can get set in our ways, and our team is going to feel that. And then the information coming our way could have the tendency to be less detailed, less controversial, less critical, because we don't want to upset things. Things are going well. But over time, people ask less questions. You ask less questions. People become less likely to disagree with what's going on. And you're drawn too heavily on the past success of the team, even when conditions have changed. And if you read John Kotter, Leading Change, this is one of the 8 reasons that organizations resist or fail to implement change, is too much reliance on past success. So what is the role of luck in leadership? We have to be careful not to equate effort with outcomes. And we have to be cautious regarding when things don't work out as planned, or what we might think is bad luck. Because when this happens, you may have a tendency to second guess yourself. And when you look at the result, it's easy to not consider what was the information available at the time of the decision. This is one of the things that I've noticed a lot over the years. And this is the reason where everybody's the expert after the result is known. But you be one of those people that can really focus in and consider what information was known. Why was the decision made at the time? Got to bring the rest of the group back to thinking like that. Because bad luck does not equate to bad leadership. And you have to watch this because, like I said, your confidence can erode. And this may be simply because of the environmental factors. It's not necessarily a bad decision. If you take a look at it critically and you decide it was a bad decision, that's one thing, but it's not automatic. And we always have to keep in mind for ourselves and for the team, our goal is to build the team for the long haul. This is the only way to scale. It's the only way to grow the team is if instead of focusing on the immediate result, which could be just a chance occurrence, we have to build for the long run. We have to build a team that can handle the ups and downs and think critically and stay focused on the long-term goal. This immediate win, we need them, but it's not everything. So how do good leaders separate decision quality from outcome quality? You want to evaluate your decision-making based on 4 criteria. Number 1 is, how clear is my intent or what I'm really trying to achieve? Do people understand that? Number 2, do the trade-offs that I have to make, is there a logic to that? Few of the decisions that you make as a leader are cut and dry, yes/no questions. Everything's a little bit of a balancing act. Does that balance make sense? Number 3, what was the information available at the time when I look back and evaluate the decision? And number 4, was my execution disciplined? Did people do what they were supposed to do in the way that they've been taught or trained? How was teamwork? Those are the ways that you evaluate whether or not you made a right decision and everything that came after that. Not simply, was the result favorable? Because that could have been caused by a lot of things. What you have to do as the leader is distinguish between the two, because if you don't, you can learn the wrong lessons. You're experiencing only part of the environment. In Iraq, we had an IED or a roadside bomb threat. I remember in my journal I wrote down one day there was 15 that we've either found or had exploded. But there could have been 20 or 25. Our guys were driving past these things all the time. So there's chance in everything. Take the IED example. You don't want to be so confident that you stop doing your checks because there's no IEDs. You're going to get people killed. And on the other hand, when things don't go well, you don't want to become timid. You want to be able to stay aggressive and do the things that you need to do despite the danger in the environment. Overconfidence from success, becoming too timid because of failures, neither of those is good for the long-term development, leadership of the team. Because you have things that are in your control and out of your control. And what do the Stoics say about that? This was central to the Stoics' line of thinking, is not to waste time on things that are outside of your control. Consider them, but don't waste time. And realize what the difference is. That's probably the main thing. And one of the themes from the Stoic lesson is that you are still responsible for the decisions that you make, but that's different than treating them like you're in total control. Epictetus from the Enchiridion, first line. Some things are up to us, some things are not up to us. 6 things that are in our control. First one is our judgment. Ask yourself, when I look at something, what am I concluding? And is that conclusion warranted? What am I deciding that this means that I see in front of me? Is my judgment based on evidence that I see right in front of me or emotion? And then take a pause and ask yourself, what story am I telling myself right now about what I see going on around me? Number 2, we can control our interpretation of things. How am I framing what's happening to me? When you see something, what meaning am I assigning to this? Is it appropriate or am I assigning too much value to it or not enough? Am I interpreting facts or fear? And of course, is there always another plausible explanation to what we're seeing here? It's a good one when you're in a group meeting and nobody has any comments on your observations. If nobody says anything else, you got to ask that. Is there another plausible explanation? Number 3 is we can control our intent. What am I actually trying to achieve here? What is the real objective right now? Maybe the circumstances have changed. And what outcome am I aiming to influence? And am I clear on my purpose right now? Do people really understand what my purpose is or what the team's purpose is? A lot of times people are not. We think because we're clear we are, but the people are lost. You got to reiterate that. Number 4, we can control our choices. Given what I know, this is what I'm choosing. This is the best option that I see. And then remind yourself, what decision is mine to make? A lot of times we get pulled into worrying about the boss's problems, and we have no business doing that. What am I choosing? Not simply what's happening to me right now. And where do I still have responsibility in what's going on? Number 5, we can control our preparation. What can I still do to reduce avoidable risk? How can I prepare before acting? Should I stress test any of my assumptions? And what am I not ready for yet? This is execution discipline. And number 6, we can control our action. What is the next controlled step that I can take? What's the best action I can take right now? What is within my immediate control to do? And what improves my position, even if the outcomes are uncertain? Now, what do the Stoics tell us about things that are not within our control? Number 1, other people, their feelings. How others react is not on you. You're not in command of their feelings. And while that seems obvious, think about all the times you change your mind based on other people's feelings or perceived feelings. You do not control other people's emotions. You might influence people, you do influence people, but you don't govern the reactions. Number 2, timing. You're not in direct control of what happens when most times. You're not in control of all the different conditions that need to be in alignment for your plan to work. And one way to look at this is you control readiness, but not the clock. Number 3, you cannot control your reputation. You can't control how people feel about you. If somebody's jealous of you or envious, you have no control over that. You can also not judge how others judge your character. Your reputation lives in the minds of others. You can control your conduct, not the people's opinions when they watch your conduct. So praise and envy, both emotions, are outside of your control. That's probably what Marcus Aurelius would tell you. And number 4, you really cannot control outcomes. Many of those factors are beyond your control. A customer goes in another direction, they buy somebody else's product instead of yours. You didn't make that decision, they did. Could you have done things differently and made the sale? Probably, but the outcome is different from the actions that go into the decision that somebody else makes. You are accountable for the judgment that you use leading up and doing the things to lead to a decision, but the decision itself, especially if it's from somebody else, you can't control that. And most of the outcomes that we deal with or that we see as leaders are the result of a lot of unpredictable outcomes, not simply your will. You can't really control fortune. Look at the stock market. You can't control a stock market. You can't control what the raw materials cost going into making the product a year from now or this year even. All you can do is act within the conditions that you see in front of you. And lastly, number 6, you cannot control chance events. Weather is a clear example. You might think, well, who cares about the weather? If you're building things, weather's a huge factor. If you're shipping, weather. Forget weather for a second. It's good just to realize that chance enters in some way every plan that you make. In those random acts, they're not negotiable. They just happen. And so don't see uncertainty as a failure of leadership. In fact, your leadership needs to be honed over the years to deal with uncertainty on a recurring and regular basis. And to follow up that section with the full quote from Epictetus, some things are up to us, some things are not up to us. If you think that what is not your own is your own, you will be hindered, you will lament, you will be disturbed, and you will blame both gods and men. And you have to have this stoic mindset to be a humble leader. Humility is not weakness. If you're able to consider chance and luck in decision-making and leadership, then you're going to be less likely to overcredit yourself when things go right. Another way of saying it is humility keeps curiosity alive. You're going to continue to ask questions. You're going to test your assumptions. And I love this one. You're going to remain receptive to inconvenient information all the way up to emergencies. And all this while people are really drawn to trying to relax and anticipate success, to try to be overly optimistic. If you're humble, you'll resist the urge to do that. What happens when we over-attribute success to our personal competence? It's natural to feel good or proud when things go well. We should do that. So what's the balance? Because of you think the plan was a success. If you really do think that, there's really no way to hide that because it's going to come through in other ways. And then people are just going to stop interacting with you in a productive way. They're going to stop bringing you that fresh information. If you think about it, if you can tell the boss thinks they're right, how likely are you to go and really upset the apple cart or bring in that bad news or just challenge the success that they're having or the whole team is having? It's really hard to do. Openly acknowledge that you got to remain critical. You have to acknowledge uncertainty. As a leader, you're communicating with your people that uncertainty is always a factor. Create space for people to bring in honest inputs. And then obviously you're not going to punish bad news just because you're disappointed. And this over time is going to result in better information flow to you, thus better decision making. Now here's 4 ways to own the good with the bad. Any leader worth anything is not going to hide behind luck when the outcome is bad luck. We all have to own our decisions fully. But you can change your posture about the whole thing. Not the accountability piece, but your posture. What do you do after the bad result? Do you analyze the inputs objectively? Do you take a look at your assumptions? Do you take a look at how you executed? Or do you just throw your arms up because you had a failure? If you can get yourself to do this, to go back after a setback and really analyze what happened, that's going to build a good discipline in your organization, and people are going to do that as well. And this shows through in 4 ways. You're going to have a confidence that's grounded in reality rather than brittle, which is to say that when things are going well, you're confident. But as soon as the first sign of danger strikes, you get all nervous and fidgety, and people can see that, and everything breaks apart. Second, and this is really hard to do, but even when you're on a winning streak, the learning continues. So can you be disciplined enough to keep your organization in learning mode when things are going well? Third one is look at failure as information, useful information, rather than just a setback. And not just a setback, but your identity. And the fourth one, probably the most important, is you don't see success as solidifying or guaranteeing successful results in the future, because you're going to have different conditions, different environments that you're going to have to operate in. And this we're going to call overgeneralization. Take the skills and experience from one environment, we're going to transfer them to another environment that's not appropriate. A new environment has a structure that is totally different. We wrongly mistake very surface similarities for deep similarity. And this is a big reason for a lot of leadership failure, is not because of bad on-the-spot judgment, but it's because of this misplaced method. We use yesterday's successful recipe for a new environment. It just doesn't work. Here's an example that may have happened to you, or maybe that you've seen, but you have somebody who's a very successful manager in one organization, great cohesive team, people work well together, the communication is great, people feel like they have a lot of autonomy, but then that manager of that great team transfers to maybe another part of the company or another company entirely. It's very political. Things are very complex. You can't really tell who works for who. Low trust. People can't rely on each other. And you have all kinds of different incentives pulling people in different directions. So you're not going to be able to take what worked in that high-functioning team and just bring it over on day one to that new team. It's not going to work. Maybe eventually you get to that point, but in that example, for the foreseeable future, you're going to have to adapt your methods for the environment that you're in. Just even the example where communication was good, people had a lot of autonomy, compared to an environment where people can't trust each other. They can't rely on each other to get work done. One concept that's closely related to this is Kahneman and Tversky's The Illusion of Validity. We develop a coherent story about our past success. And this story that we tell ourselves makes it very difficult to not try to predict success for the future. And we look past the changing environment entirely. One of the quotes from Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow, is that the confidence that we experience in ourselves is not a judgment based on facts or data. It's a feeling. So past success can easily lead to a strong narrative. A strong narrative inside, in your mind, leads to confidence or inflated confidence. And then inflated confidence leads us to generalize. Another way of saying generalize would be to overlook certain details, and then we ignore the details of the environment that we're currently operating in. This is why strategies can fail, because the goal fails to take into account the circumstances or intermediate objectives that need to be accomplished along the way. Another one of Kahneman and Tversky's ideas is the law of small numbers. You get 1 or 2 or 3 successes and you make a sweeping judgment based on just a couple wins, might be random wins, when in reality, you may have just gotten lucky. There may have been favorable conditions, good timing, maybe your competition was weak. It worked before, it's going to work again. And then there's the success trap, James March. Organizations learn more from success than from failure, but often it's the wrong lessons. We use what works, and a lot of times that's fine, but you got to stay critical. Just reading about this recently, the brain doesn't learn nearly as much when things go well, when there's success, as to when there's a problem and the brain has to work to figure it out. Changed my whole thinking on problem solving. You want difficulty. You want to challenge the brain to get better. So you can do everything right and still get that bad outcome. And the opposite is true. In leadership, things are constantly changing. You never see the full picture. We should never interpret any outcome, good or bad, in isolation. We should account for chance, not eliminate it. And we have to build judgment and systems that consider chance, that take it into account. Just as important as any other leadership skill is understanding our bias. That's going to ensure you have a long upward development path rather than be one of these successful yet temporary leaders. That's it. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you're leading people, you don't get ideal situations. You get real ones. And leadership isn't about wishing you had this ideal team. It's about leading who you have right now, today. And that's what we focus on this channel. So if this helped you think a little bit more clearly about leadership, consider subscribing. And until next time, be aware of how you draw conclusions from success and failure.